Okay, I think we're actually going to record this time, Alex. I feel it in my bones.
Good,
Uh,
because we're actually recording now.
Great. Perfect. Oh, hey, speaking of
Oh,
which,
these cameras are on. Shit.
sorry. Oh, hey, since the cameras are on and so are the mics, thank you for joining us on Total Pebble Knockdown, everybody. My name is Nathan.
And my name is Alex, and I was gonna mute my microphone there and say it so that it would be funny, but I figured we'd have to retake the whole thing, so I didn't.
Yeah, we've already tried that too many times now, so let's just move on. Uh, First thing up on the show is going to be a crit think, and it's something that I've been thinking about recently after watching a video. So I wanted to go over it with you, Alex, and get your thoughts on it.
Sure
Um,
thing. What
sure.
video did you watch? That's what I want to know.
Okay, so I was watching a Monster of the Week video from Dungeon Dad. And what he does is basically takes monsters that were not necessarily in 5e, but were in earlier versions of Dungeons and Dragons, and talks about like the story hooks and such, but also creates like 5e stat blocks and everything for them, so that you
Okay.
could use them in the modern day. And he happened to have one that looked very interesting about what he said could be the most infamous monster in D&D history, which was the false Hydra. Now,
Oh, that name rings a bell.
yeah, but maybe it doesn't if there happens to be a false Hydra around. So, one of the story hooks, I'll just start with basically the setup. One of the setups he basically used for a story hook. So your adventuring party is sitting around a tavern. They receive a letter from one of your mentors, somebody that you used to know.
Sure, some contact.
Yeah, and that letter says something to the effect of, "You must help. I know they are in danger, but I can't remember why." And so it's supposed to kind of lead you to a town where there is essentially a false Hydra that has been growing in power and strength. And to explain kind of what that is, imagine kind of an amorphous blob that has like a head that comes up that just has like two big open like black eyes and one big mouth.
So,
And
black-eyed blob, got it.
exactly. But the thing that kind of makes it very suspicious, very dangerous, is that it basically keeps singing a song that makes it imperceivable while it's singing the song.
So it's a mimetic hazard.
I guess so. The way that they describe it is, so as it's singing the song, it doesn't really make it invisible. What it does is it makes it completely imperceivable. Like it could be in front of you and there's just no way for you to understand it because the song masks its entire appearance. But
It's kind of like the concept from the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy of the somebody else's problem field.
okay, we'll go with
Or
that.
the chameleon circuit that Doctor Who uses for the TARDIS.
Yeah, I guess so. But it does get a little bit more complex than that.
Of course. I'm just saying it's similar. It's
Sure.
not perceivable even though it's there.
Even though it's there, yeah. So the way that they describe this, though, that makes it real insidious, and the reason why it's so dangerous is that it still feeds on people. It still eats people. So when it gets up close, it obviously can't sing its song anymore when it's trying to kill somebody.
Right, that would be broken.
Right. So anyone that was seeing the false Hydra at that point would see the person getting eaten or killed. But as soon as the song starts back up, the very notion of that person who was there, who is no longer there, or the perception that you saw the false Hydra, starts to strip out of your memory entirely.
Okay, so it affects your memory of itself.
Right. And the
We're gonna
memory...
label this one cognito hazard.
Yes. And the memory of the person that has now been killed. Like, you don't remember why they're not there at all.
Yeah, it's like in the SCP Foundation, this would be considered like an anti-mimetic.
Sure, sure. Like, actually, we had talked about the Mandela effect. It's sort of
Mhm.
like that, but like on a much more like individual scale. Like, well, where did the priest go? Well, I know that we have a church and there was a priest here. He must have gone to a neighboring town and we haven't gotten a new priest yet.
Yeah, and then it becomes what priest?
Exactly. What priest? What are you talking about? Because there's all of these gaps in logic around it. And the false Hydra starts to grow other heads as it goes, and eventually gets to a point where it can just have the heads kind of coming up through sewer grates or whatever, and
Okay.
just send its song off to everyone, and eventually enthrall people to try and get people to come to have them bring people to their town.
Now the question is, how far does that song go?
It can it depends on how big the Hydra gets,
I
because
guess that's fair.
it can grow to like a gigantic size over the course of time, where it has to eat a lot of people daily just to survive.
Now
Um,
here's the other question: is
yeah.
it mobile?
It can't really move very well. Like, it can patrol the streets, but once it gets to a gigantic size, it can't really like shuffle off. So what it has to do is get its thrall humans to move it to the next town.
Before it consumes, so it kind of like
Yeah.
enslaves them.
Yeah, exactly. And so you could conceivably have your adventuring party go into this town where it cannot perceive of this giant Hydra, this false Hydra, but then get attacked by people if you try to kill the Hydra, because the Hydra has enslaved all the people in the town.
I think it's actually funnier. I think a better hook for that would be having the party unknowingly move this Hydra around for it.
Yeah, without even knowing.
So if it's imperceivable and it makes you forget about it, have the party encounter it, wipe their memory of it, and have them being like, yeah, we're just transporting this crate.
Yeah, we're just transporting the crate
We just
around.
have a quest to transport this crate to the other town.
Yeah, we don't know
And
why.
so if they, there are these difficult checks, you have them maybe think there's something weird about the crate,
Yeah.
unless you get a really good roll.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have them bring this crate to their town, and it's really just the Hydra.
Yeah.
And they bring it to another town, and then have them find out later that, oh no, we've been enthralled by this thing, and oh shit, we have to right or wrong. I think that's a way better use of that.
That probably is. But but the reason why this is a crit think is really because it brought up an interesting question for me as I'm thinking about this. Because one of the things that Dungeon Dad was mentioning on that is, like, how do the players figure out that there's a false Hydra in this town if the song is going on and you can't perceive it while it's there? Well, there are obviously some spells that you might utilize. One of them would be silence, because if you create silence in an area either where the Hydra is, where it's singing, or around your party, it deafens you.
Sure.
So you can't hear the song, and then all of a sudden it becomes perceptible.
Sure. I think another spell you could actually utilize for that, not per spell description, but per spell what it actually does. I think a Zone of Truth.
Oh, a Zone of Truth, okay.
If you were to use that in the vicinity of where the Hydra is, that's imperceivable, but you were to say, use Zone of Truth, I would let a party get away with that, saying, yeah, this thing concealing itself, Zone of Truth doesn't technically function as like you can see it, but I think it would work, because instead of being imperceivable and like hiding its identity, it would be suddenly like, oh, this is the true creature.
Yeah. There's a lot of things too. If you have somebody who was deaf that was in town and you were able to use sign language or communicate with them somehow, they would be able to tell you that there is this monstrous horror that's all over town that nobody else seems to believe that is there. Or that, these gaps in logic don't make any sense, and I remember when this person was there at the tavern. I remember the barmaid that was there, and they're not there anymore.
That's an interesting part, too, is if the song is what makes people forget, is it continued exposure to the song? If they stop hearing the song, do they remember? Or is it just that if they've heard the song, they forget. And the longer they're exposed to it, the more about that they forget.
That's an interesting idea too. Yeah, if you removed said false Hydra from this whole thing, would they eventually remember these people that were lost, or is it just the continuous part of that is the illusion?
I think also another hook there would be to have the town have missing people posters from the town.
Yeah.
But the residents of the town don't remember who these people are.
Right.
So they're like, there are these posters for these missing, children, because those are generally what you see more than adults typically in that type of situation. Or just like, this person's gone missing, we haven't seen them since this date, which turns out to be months ago, and then you ask people about that thing, because maybe your hook is to find these missing people, and you ask people in the town about them, and they have no idea who these people are. They're like, I've never seen that person in my life that says they live here, and we don't know.
Yeah.
Because then you've got, okay, well, what's going on? These people are missing from this town, but nobody here remembers them, so either they're all in on it as a thought process, or perhaps those people aren't real. But then if you were to get people from outside the town normally, like a passing through merchant being like, oh yeah, I remember seeing that person once. It's like a fuzzy memory because they haven't been exposed to that song as long. So that would be interesting.
Yeah. But the real question that arose from all of this was, and maybe just because I happen to be playing a bard, and bards have very, very music-based abilities, is how would I rectify this if I received that note? Because my character may not know what a false Hydra is, but I very much now do know what a false Hydra is. So I receive... Yeah.
You yourself, not the player, like if I were to say, introduce that false Hydra in the game we're playing, I obviously would not tell you that, hey, I'm going to have a false Hydra in this game.
Right. But...
So players that don't know it's there shouldn't know it, but once you learn that is a thing, you'll be looking out for it.
Right. Like, because if I saw that letter going back to, I know they are in danger, but I can't remember why, and I started to see those cues, if I'm familiar with the lore as a player, I'll be starting to think about, like, ooh, how can I address that problem? But my character doesn't necessarily know what the hell this is at all. And so as a bard, that got me into a really interesting query. Like, okay, if I'm going to this town, and I, as the player, are like, I think this might be a false Hydra situation, I'm going to want to have some spells ready that are going to disrupt this song. That would be my normal thought process. However, the character would not necessarily know that, or think to have those spells available to them.
It's a sticky situation between what your character presumes they might need, especially for spellcasters where you have to prepare the spells ahead of time. It's a matter of figuring out what spells might you need over the next time period versus what you typically take. Like if you have a general spell list you take and then you change it, like I think we might be dealing with this.
Sure.
And for instance, that shouldn't be a big deal, especially a spontaneous caster who has access to all their spells. Swapping up their spell list isn't a big deal. And having them swap their spell list up to potentially deal with something they perceive as a threat coming is honestly a great idea. It's where you get into the semantics of, okay, as a player, I feel like this character might get into this situation.
Right.
But this character has no idea about this situation.
Right.
So, do you need to justify it in character?
Right.
Or can you hand wave it away and just say, for the brevity of the game and your character's sake and for fun, yeah, go ahead, do that. I want to do this because it makes sense to me as a player.
Okay.
one of those kind of gray areas. If it's like a real like survival type game, for instance, where it's like,
Yeah.
oh yes, keep track of all your food and all your weight. I would say you have no clues about this. You have no reason to be prepared for this,
Hmm.
unless it's something you would, as as your character would be prepared for it.
Yeah.
In the case that like you're not really prepared for finding a trap, you've never found a trap, you have no, it's one of those things. But that's like such a just specific case
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah.
I don't feel like it would be right to punish a player or a character for saying, "Oh, I'm gonna switch up my spells because maybe this will come in handy."
Right.
Like that's should be fine in most cases,
Sure. Sure.
unless it's super specific and it's like, yes, I took a spell, to ward off mind flayers, and it's like,
Yeah.
what reason do you have to suspect you're coming in contact with mind flayers?
Well, I read the stat block.
It's like I read the adventure ahead of time, and
Yeah.
it would be like, you cannot take that spell
No,
now.
sorry. Yeah.
Thank you. You ruin everything.
Right, because I worry about like influencing the game because of metagaming as a general rule, and it feels like the more you learn about monsters and like the intricacies of the world as a player, it becomes harder to remove yourself as a character from the game. So I start to think to myself, like, okay, well, what are typical monsters that we're going to deal in the area that we're currently in? Are you
Right.
around Neverwinter? Yeah. And
But in the instance of a false Hydra, where if it A, obscures its presence, B, it's forgettable,
yeah,
the only way you would really like know about that is from like learning about it ahead of time.
exactly. Or if you had encountered them at some point in the past
And not forgotten about it.
and not forgotten about it because maybe you killed it. And because
Right.
you killed it. Yeah. Yeah.
So in those cases, it's interesting because, yeah, as you said, separating the player knowledge from the character knowledge is important in a lot of cases. I don't think it's game breaking,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it should be one of the communication things between the player and the games master,
Sure.
where it's, hey, I think this is a situation that might be coming up. Like, I think this sounds like a false Hydra, but my character doesn't know anything about those.
Yeah.
So maybe either work something out with the GM,
Mm-hmm.
or say, perhaps you could be like, all right, well, I want to do this because of that, but I also don't want it to be super effective because there's no reason I should know about that. Working out some kind of compromise should work.
Sure.
But it is definitely, especially with a really unique monster like that,
Yeah.
like that players really wouldn't know about unless you've had it, or again, if we talked about it here. Let's say you're running a game with people who listen to this podcast.
Sure.
Okay? Let's
Mhm.
say you and I have now talked about it, and Graveyard is sitting next to me over here, and she's heard about the false
Okay.
Hydra now as well,
Yeah.
a bit, at least one half this conversation.
Sure.
So if I were to add this to the game, you guys would know what it is,
Sure.
but your
Yeah.
characters would have no idea what this is.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Because like I kind of settled on the fact that it's more important for the story that the character's knowledge takes precedence over the player's knowledge.
It does.
So-
The
yeah.
players are the ones running the characters, but the characters are the one the story is about.
Right. So at the end of the day, like me as player would say I'd want something like silence or just something sound based if I thought I could disrupt sound in general. I don't know if like my thunder spells might work for something like that, but I think it would be kind of like a crapshoot, honestly, if I tried. But the thing about it is, I would normally think to do that, but I kind of settled on the fact that even if I was pretty sure, like 60, 70% sure that a false Hydra was going to be a big story hook for the adventure, I still probably wouldn't pick silence as a spell for my character because my character just simply would not be familiar with that, and I know that.
Right. And
Yeah.
that's, I think, what the overall thing is your character, would your character
Mm.
do that? Is that something they would do? And you have to kind of internalize it and be like, well, would my character really take silence if he's a bard? It's like, he probably wouldn't take silence. He might take something else, sound-based and disruptive, but probably not silence.
Sure, yeah. And that's the thing, too, is that, like, playing a bard, that's the class that is most likely to have abilities that are sound-based in their repertoire. So you would think that if anyone was going to be familiar with it, the only thing I could justify is that if Max or some other bard actually from telling tales and knowing lore and stuff was familiar with creatures like that.
I think something you could do as a games master in that case would be to have notes around town, perhaps.
Mm.
Some sort of findable set dressing pieces, some knowledge, obscure knowledge that might give hints.
Yeah.
Because, if these people don't forget it instantly and they kind of have notes saying, oh yeah, there's this weird song, or another person went missing, but then they have no recollection of these notes being left because it erases their memory of these things.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that, diary entries, findable things in that nature, I think would help. If you made it more investigative than just monster hunting, I think you could do a lot more with it.
Yeah. I like the idea of this. This is a thought. Okay, so you remember the Obey posters with Andre the Giant on them?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I want one that has, like, the false Hydra on it that says "listen" underneath.
That's good.
And those would be, like, posted by somebody who was not like influenced by the sound. Like, maybe they have tinnitus or something, and so it, like, disrupts the song in some way so that it doesn't actually affect them, and they're just putting them in back alleys to try and warn people about it. Yeah, that would be kind of fun. I think that needs
to be the thumbnail. Is just a false Hydra Obey poster.
Yeah,
it just says listen.
Yeah, it just says listen. But yeah. So, I mean, hey, if you want to get eaten by an amorphous blob with giant teeth, hey, there's something that you can do.
I'm wondering how an amorphous blob has teeth, by the way.
Well, because it's kind of just a big ball, but then there's a head. There's like a big neck. And so the teeth and the eyes just come out of the top of the...
Yeah,
the
okay,
neck.
Sure. Blobs can make teeth. It's fine.
It's okay. At some point, maybe I'll have a graphic at some point up here so people can visualize it.
Great. Find something horrifying, put it up on screen, but censor it. But just completely censor it so no one can be sure they don't know what it looks like.
Yeah.
It erases.
I'll blur it. I'll blur it slightly.
Blur
That's perfect. Okay. So, did we kind of settle on the fact that the player has to just be okay with the character not knowing?
I think so, but again, it is a crit thing, so I think we're gonna pass this off to you listeners.
Exactly.
And let us know what you think about this situation, I guess.
Yeah.
Or let us know what you think about the false Hydra in general. That's a really cool concept that I think you could have a lot of fun with as long as you don't tell your players it's a false Hydra ahead of time.
Yeah. Question in general, though, I'm gonna pass along is how do you rectify player versus character knowledge? Because I'm trying to figure out how we really do that, because it is very difficult to separate role-playing in its general form and knowledge.
Let's specify in this situation, because player versus character knowledge broadly is a very big topic.
Okay, so how does your player or character deal with a false Hydra?
There you go. Something along those lines. You guys can figure out the question. You're critical thinkers.
Exactly. You spazzed out there for a second. I think the false Hydra might have gotten to your stream. So there's...
Were you?
Yeah. Oh, was I? Was I false Hydra all along? Up next on the show today, we have a soapbox, which means I, and actually Alex, I'm sure, get to share our opinion. This is the op-ed piece
No, I'll sit here just nodding the whole time so that you can just talk and I won't talk. It's
Oh,
perfect.
good. Typical soapbox.
Yeah, a general soapbox.
Yeah. Okay. So, recently, for reasons that I still don't really understand, I went back and played the original Rage.
I've never played Rage.
That's fine.
So
Yeah, exactly. Uh, I had played Rage 2 a couple of years ago when it came out, but it's been a long time since I played the original. I was like, I'm kind of curious if I go back and see if it holds up, because I had kind of mixed impressions of it to begin with, and still do.
perfect.
Perfect, yeah. But one of the things that I noticed more prevalently in that game that got me to thinking about how annoying this is in other games was a phenomenon I call Decorative Door Syndrome. And that is basically when you're going through a world and they've presented you with doors, but the doors are not really interactable. You can never go through them. They are just there for show.
Just set pieces.
They're just set pieces, a door that's just there to look pretty as a skin on the side of a building. And I'm here to tell you that is a really, really annoying game aesthetic. If I see a door, there should be something on the other side of the door. The door, it represents the transition from one area to another area. If there's nothing on the other side of the door, why'd you put the door there? I don't understand this. Like, the thing is, sometimes there are games where I get this a little bit more. When they have, like, metropolitan games, Cyberpunk did this too, you can't go into all the places. And they need to have the doors to make it look like the buildings are buildings.
Yeah, I was going to let you go on a rant, but I was going to say, Nathan, I don't know if you've ever seen reality, but
you can't
generally
go through all the
speaking,
doors?
buildings have doors.
Yes,
And
buildings
you cannot go through all of them. You can try. You can actually go through all of them if you try hard enough. You will be arrested.
Yes, and you know what? There might be mechanics in the game if you go into places you're not supposed to go into.
Right. I think the issue of having doors always lead to somewhere else is then it becomes well, if we're putting a door here, it needs to lead somewhere, but that adds a lot more you need to create in a lot of these cases, whereas the door is simply there to show you it is a building. On the flip side, if you were to say have Cyberpunk as an example, where you are on the streets of the city and none of these buildings had doors on them, you would also notice that and complain that there's no way to get into these buildings. How do people get into these buildings without doors?
Well, one, I think you'd be thinking way too much about the buildings.
I mean, you already are with thinking about these decorative doors.
I am already
So we're
thinking
here,
about it.
and we're going to be semantic about it.
Okay, fine. We're going to be semantic about it. The reason I think it became kind of more of an issue in Rage, though, is because most of the time, you are in these, like, broken down buildings that are just abandoned. They're set pieces to go through, because it's a shooter by its nature.
Right.
That you're going through to deal with, like, these raider clans that are there. But you get into these areas that are busted down, there's nothing in them, and they'll have places that just have, like, double doors. And those double doors some of them are just never brought back. And when you go up to them, they obviously knew that this was a door that somebody might interact with, because a little caution sign will come up when you get up to that door to let you know you can't interact with it. Some of these are ones that will loop back, because there's supposed to be a lot of looping levels that come back and allow you through a door you couldn't go through previously. But some of them are just there. They're just there on the side, and it's like, well, that would be an easy fix. Just don't present me with the door at all. You know, you don't have to. It's not necessary. You've in some places, you've put a bunch of stuff in front of where the door was, and then I have to get behind those areas to find the door that I can't use. So why not just hole up the whole thing, block off the whole area that I don't need to go through, and just not present me with the door at all? be fine with that. I'm not complaining. I'd rather not deal with the door at all. You know, this is something that I started to realize. Like, once you start seeing it, you can't unsee it. So it starts to be the thing where you start going back through all of the other games that you've played and be like, wait a second, where were there other doors that I had a problem everywhere? And I started to think to myself, like, Bethesda is generally okay with this when it comes to the RPGs. The Elder Scrolls games, if you remember, settlements are pretty much open. There really aren't buildings that you can't go into. If anything, they might require a special key or something in order to go into them. Larger areas, though, like in Fallout traditionally doesn't allow you to go through everything. And some of them are better than others, but I remember when I went to the Capital Wastelands in 3, and when you get into, like, the streets where the big buildings are that are all run down, there's a lot of buildings there. But then there are a lot of doors and other things that are just there for show because they really didn't have anything for those rundown buildings for you to go into. And so I think that this is more of a metropolitan problem. Like,
Question for you as an example: would you prefer in something like Fallout, for instance, a building that has a door you cannot go into, or a building that you can go in the door, but maybe the first floor, like it's the first entrance area of the building, is like a ground floor with a staircase that is destroyed, so you can't get up above that first floor?
I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that.
I feel like that would require you need to then make it so essentially if it's a skyscraper or like a tower where it's got a staircase going up in a spiral as part of it, maybe the first staircase is broken and it has no way that you can jump or cross the stairs to get up the rest, but then it has a thing that you can look up and see how tall it is. The issue there is generally if you put that much effort, I think, into designing that, you're gonna players are gonna expect they can get up there.
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah. No, I understand. I think the other thing that I'm fine with is I've seen this done a lot, and Fallout will typically do that, especially in like New Vegas. I saw this when you get into buildings and there are certain areas you can't go to or stairs, is where the doors are just like off and it's just caved in. And you can see that it's caved in the back. It's like, yeah, okay, I get it. I can't go there because it's just caved in. But if you present me with a door that looks like it's perfectly enterable, like it looks perfectly able to interact with, and I can't, I start asking questions as to why. Is this supposed to be something in the future? Am I going to have to remember this for the future? And like I think that there's games that are able to get around that by either blocking them off, or there's a caution thing around them, or they just put them so far off the beaten path that you don't normally think people are going to interact with them in the main storyline. They're just there for show in the outer parts. But when it's like right there in the course of playing the game, and I just can't interact with them, it starts to feel like the world building is purposefully, railroading me in one direction and discouraging me from exploring altogether.
In some games, that is definitely the case, because there are games that want a linear path for you. They're telling a specific story in a specific progression path.
Sure.
And they don't want you to explore those areas, so they do not make those areas. They're like, yes, this is kind of a set piece, but it don't go over here.
Right, exactly. Which is why I don't want them to put a door there. That's kind of the thing, is like, I'm cool if you don't want me to explore there, but there are ways that you can make it clear that I'm not supposed to go there, and I am perfectly
False Hydras.
Cool with that. Yeah, put a false Hydra there.
False Hydras over there.
Yeah, just have a whole bunch of very angry thralls in front of that door that are just coming at you full gallop. You could do that. Sure, why not? there are other examples that you can give as you go through. I think shooters have this problem because they are trying to keep you on a linear pathway, but a lot of times they are going through cities, towns, and you can't go into them. I see that in Urban Sprawl. Like, I think I know you played a little bit of like the Surge 2. There are just a specific number of places you can go, but you are in the city. So you're going to occasionally want to interact with some of the other places there, but you've frozen on me. Oh, you're back.
I'm not frozen, I'm here.
Okay.
Why is the internet being dumb?
I don't know. But anyway, so yeah, from a design perspective, I started thinking about that and how annoying as a player it is when I am presented with something that is supposed to represent a new horizon, a place for me to go, and then you have given me nothing to go. You know what it is? It's the reverse of the welcome to Jurassic Park moment. It is
welcome, please leave Jurassic Park moment.
Yeah, it's the welcome to Jurassic... oh, no, sorry, park closed, go home. Go home. No park to see here, sorry folks. I faked you out. Go around the side entrance. The side entrance will get you.
Go around.
Go around. Yes, please. Yes, please go around. Nothing to see here. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Literally, there's no way for you to interact with the curtain. The Wizard of Oz isn't here. Just pretend it's not there. From a design perspective, it's annoying. Don't present me with something that I can potentially go into. Oh, Thief was the other example I was going to give, because those streets are relatively open, like you can go from one area to another through blockades and stuff, so a lot of the city is cordoned off. But occasionally, even though you're a thief and you're supposed to get into these buildings, you'll go across these areas where they've left you with doors to places that are just not there entirely. And then you'll go to the next place and, oh, there's a window I can open up. And I can go through that window, but here's like an identical window. It is not interactive entirely. It's like, there's got to be better cues for me to know where I'm going and make it a little clearer that I can't go through an area. Especially if I've seen an exact thing like that I have been able to interact with and I have gone down before. And so, something to consider in game design. Please, don't make me hope.
Right.
Yeah. Finally on the show today, we have games you thought we'd played. Games
we have played?
Games we've
been playing.
Games we've been playing. There you go. Because, to be honest with you, it's probably not going to be a big surprise that we did. Especially for me, because I think I actually mentioned this when we did our live episode. But I've been playing a little bit of Weird West, which just released.
That sounds weird.
It is, and it's set in the West.
Wow.
So, well, truth in advertising is something that's got going for it.
True.
But I'll try to explain it a little bit. Basically, it's like an isometric viewpoint, like an old CRPG kind of viewpoint, kind of top-down,
Sure.
Where it's real-time, though. It's not turn-based combat, anything like that. It's all in real-time. And they have labeled it essentially as an immersive sim, which I'll get into what that is in a little bit. But basically what you need to understand is, imagine it's set in the West, but it is indeed weird, by which they mean that there are, like, supernatural creatures, werewolves are an actual thing, stuff of that nature is happening in this world.
So it's a pseudoscience West.
Pseudoscience West, essentially, yeah. And you will get special abilities, and, you are supposed to go through with multiple characters, because there's, like, 5 character story arcs that you go through.
Okay.
To be honest with you, have really only been playing the first one so far. I have not quite completed that. I don't know if I'm going to get to the other ones. I'm pretty sure I'm close to the end of the first one, but it starts you off in the storyline of a gunslinger whose husband has been taken by these raiders that are cannibals, basically. And
As
so,
raiders do.
yeah, so her husband may possibly be alive, but but she has to basically leave the family homestead life after seeing her son killed and her husband dragged off by these guys. The whole justification is that the son gets killed off because there's not enough meat on his bones. The
Oh,
the husband though looks
wasteful
like,
cannibals.
I know they really are. But after seeing that, realizes that she has to go and unbury her old irons from the time that she was a bounty hunter,
Okay.
and go and hunt these guys down. So that's the first basic storyline, and the ones that come after it get more and more supernatural from what I've seen, to the characters that actually do transform into werewolves and are like more of the weirder parts of the Weird West. But the gameplay itself is basically going from one area to another. Time tracks while you go from one area to another. Sometimes they are on timers if you're looking for bounties and stuff like that. And when you get into those towns, the idea is that you are interacting with people, getting missions, hints about where your husband might be, and then going to areas where there are a bunch of very bad dudes, where you can take those dudes out with your guns. And other various things, because obviously it's the West, so you got like dynamite as well, and sometimes that's handy. But
yeah, that is.
Yeah, you'll probably find though that the regular old guns are going to do a pretty fair job. Now, as I said, they labeled this as an immersive sim, and that's a genre that we don't really talk much about on the show, I don't think. But
Not as much, no.
Not specifically about what that is, but I'd say that if you wanted examples of that, Deus Ex and Dishonored are considered immersive sims.
Are they?
They are.
Okay.
The reason why, the essential definition of it is that creating a world where your actions have consequential, like by doing actions, it affects the game itself. Your interactions with it, and being able to actually utilize the environment in different ways to play in different ways. So they Deus Ex kind of started this whole thing. It's one of the ones that kind of started it with, where you can interact with the world and go through those chapters in a myriad of different ways. You can do it by stealth, you can do it by direct combat, you can use strength and your jumping skills to get up to different areas, you can talk your way out of situations, etc. A lot of different ways to interact with the environment. Dishonored also has this where you can choose whether you're going around killing everybody or if you're trying to neutralize them non-lethally, and that does affect the world and the environment and then the mechanics of it as time goes on. And this does have elements of that. Like, for instance, there'll be like acid barrels, and if you wanted to, you could kick the acid barrel, and if it gets set on fire, it explodes. And then anybody who's caught in that is obviously not having a great day. You also have the ability to actually sneak up on characters and knock them out. You get them into a chokehold, and you can then hide the bodies somewhere if you would like. So there are a lot of elements about how you go through this. But to be fair, I found that most of the time, the quickest and easiest way to do any of this was pretty much to just go in and start trying to shoot everything because the sneaking up on people and then trying to drag them off, it takes a while. And besides that, also kind of leaves you exposed while you're doing it.
Right.
You have to pick your targets very carefully. And I did find that usually the enemies aren't particularly lethal. Like, I could get into a fight and kind of like hole behind something to make sure that they're not shooting at me and kind of veer out and fire. So, usually if I could take out a few from stealth and then just say, screw it. And I had quite a few times where there'd be like a bunch of people sitting around a card table, and if I wanted to, I could try to distract one, have them come out, get them in a chokehold, take them out to a bush, and try to distract the next one and have them come out. Or get this, I could throw a stick of dynamite into the room and just blow them all up.
Yeah. It sounds like my approach when I was playing Cyberpunk.
Yeah, exactly. You start to realize that in a lot of ways, there's, I could have taken a different path.
Like, could I take them all out non-lethally? Yes. And in cases that it's not a lot of enemies and it's easily accessible, I do. I do kill them. I mean, I take them out lethally, I murder everybody. But,
sure.
I sneak up and I murder them and stuff their bodies in refrigerators and stuff.
Yeah.
But in other cases, it's like, how many guys are there? There's a lot. Is it open? Yeah, it's pretty open. Do I have my sniper rifle? Yeah.
I did like the fact that, like, Cyberpunk kind of punted the whole non-lethal thing. You could just get a non-lethal mod for, like, every gun in the game. You just put the non-lethal mod on, and then they're still alive after you shoot them in the head with a bullet.
Yeah,
that's the way it is. And I'm like, that's terrific. I can get my revolver and I just go up to people, just shoot them all. Nope, didn't kill them. See, they're rolling around on the ground. Everything's fine.
You just melee them afterwards to kill them.
You can melee them afterward. It's fine. It's fine. It's all good. I feel like Cyberpunk actually could justify an immersive sim title only because there's so many ways that you can address situations like that, and it does affect your relationship with a lot of people, but they do try to use it for Weird West. The thing is that it's usually, when you think about like the immersive sim, I usually think about it as a first-person perspective game because it's supposed to be like immersing you in the character itself, and this is definitely a third-person top-down, more of a tabletop kind of look to it. Which is fine. I don't mind it really, but from a technical aspect, I think is where it starts to lose you, because they did make some of the systems way too convoluted for what it is. Mostly the gunplay part of it, because you have to hold down one trigger or one mouse key, depending on how you're playing it, to aim the gun, to say that I'm actually aiming the gun, another one to fire, but then if you want to use any of the special abilities, you have to hit a button after you aim, but before you fire, make sure that it's active, then you fire it. And I realized that, okay, you've made this whole thing way too convoluted, because the options don't come up until you're aiming.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. It's because you'll have other options out of aiming that you can pick, but once
that sounds annoying.
It is. It's very annoying. And making sure you equip the right gun, you can have 2 equipped at a time, and then there are going to be options for you in each one. Make sure you're aiming before you hit it. If you come out of aim, it's not going to be selected anymore. So make sure you're aiming, select your item for fanning a hammer on your pistol or whatever, and then you can pick a target, and as you're picking the target, then you can activate it and do that. The problem is that this is all in real time. So you're trying to manage all of this while they're running around the battlefield and hiding behind stuff, and you start to realize you don't interact with those systems because it's just so much easier to just shoot. Just shoot.
Shoot normally.
Just shoot normally. Like these abilities that they give you, you rarely ever use because it's so convoluted to use it. I could just shoot the target,
Right.
It just doesn't make sense. And also, you do get bounty hunters that you can add to your crew. You can hire people. And you start to realize that if you just equip them with a good gun that doesn't use ammunition, I mean, you have to use ammunition, but they don't. And you use some of your skills with these golden playing cards to upgrade your basic stats. You can just say that they have more health and ability, and eventually they're just walking tanks. So
yeah, this is essentially why you gave your companions in Fallout 4 a really good weapon to use, and then enough ammo to reload it so they had infinite ammo.
Oh yeah.
It's like,
Absolutely.
yes, you've got an automatic crippling pistol. That way Death Claws can't fucking hurt me.
Yeah, exactly. I
Because
mean,
now it's got both kneecaps broken.
let's face it, like the fact is that once Fox was available to you in Fallout 3, you just make sure he's got his minigun. Let him
Yeah.
go. Just
Yep.
let him go. Because he doesn't use ammo. It doesn't matter. He'll just pump it through. It never stops. Uh, but yeah. So that was kind of a problem, and I just feel like there were two ways I tried playing it. I tried playing it on my Xbox, and I tried playing it on the computer. Because I wanted to see what the difference is. I tried the controller, and the controller was giving me a little bit of frustration, because I think the top-down, trying to do the shooter aspect of it and everything, was not lending itself well to the controller. So I said, okay, well, I'll try the computer. The problem is, of course, now my movement is all on the WASD, so it's easier to do the aiming part with the mouse. I can do that way easier, but now my movement is all tied to the keys, so it feels a little janky. The thing about it is that the game is not nearly as engaging as it sounds. Like, you think to yourself, this seems like a great idea, right? I'm in the West, and it's supernatural. It's like Winona Earp or something like that, you know? It's those kinds of elements, but most of the time, you're just, like, taking out bandits. Just regular bandits.
That reminds me that I wanted to do a D&D campaign or a tabletop campaign where it was Western, not like Wild West, but like Gold Rush West.
Yeah.
And it was, I think I wanted to call it like the Wild Magic West.
Sure.
Yeah, something like that. I have an idea for that. I'm not going to go into detail right now, though.
Sure. But, you know, I could totally understand if it was like Red Dead Redemption, like Undead Nightmare, that kind of thing, you know, or even when they did Red Dead 2 and there was some supernaturally stuff, like, in the corners of that game, you know. I like that idea. You know, it's a cool setting and everything like that, but it never felt like good to play. Like, there was always something about it that felt a little off. There'd be, you know, monsters that were, like, holed up in certain areas, and they might detect you. Like, you would never see, like, cones. You kind of figure that within a strategic framework, there'd be, like, cones of, you know, sight, and those will be on the mini-maps, but they're not...
Yeah, but those aren't immersive, Nathan.
That's true. But you know, the mini-map is there. The thing is
that
that
it's
they do
also
have the
not
mini-map.
immersive.
Exactly. That's not very immersive. But the problem is that if you're going to show me the view angles on the mini-map, I'd really like to be able to see it on the actual game itself, because what happens is that when I'm seeing guys come across and everything like that, I can see the viewing angles on my mini-map. Now I have to keep looking up at the mini-map in order, and I'm not looking at the actual game, which doesn't feel immersive at all, to be completely honest with you. There are potions you can use to, like, highlight the enemies, but a lot of it just blends together. And I think the biggest problem is just that, it blends together, and when you get indoors, oh man, it gets really tricky, because it's pulled out so much that it doesn't, like, automatically show you what's inside if you're just in there. Sometimes you get trapped behind walls from a technical aspect. But the weirdness is in the fringes of it, but I think they could have done a lot better job of kind of presenting it up at the front, and I never really felt, like, super engaged with what's going on. And then they do have that other problem we were talking about on a previous show about resource management and your carrying capacity. They have slots in this game, and everything requires a slot. Your armor, it encourages you to have, like, a rifle, a pistol, a shotgun, a bow, and a melee weapon. Well, all 5 of those take up a slot.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, it sure is. If you have any food items will only stack to a certain degree, up to like 5, and then they start a new stack. All of those stacks take up individual things. You use ore, copper, silver, and gold ore to upgrade weapons, etc. in the game. But both copper bars and then copper ore, those both take a separate slot. Same thing for the rest of them. Junk items, individual junk items, end up taking up a ton. So you spend a lot of time in your inventory. And once I realized, well, my horse will have an inventory, now I got to go back to my horse, try to dump a bunch of stuff onto the saddlebags. and go to my individual, characters, my posse, as it was, go into their inventory, dump a bunch of stuff into their inventory, because they have slots too. And it's like, okay, so now it's just micromanagement for the heck of it. There was just a lot of stuff I could have seen them streamline, and maybe in the future they will, so that it feels a little bit better to play, just from getting around and the user interface of everything to make it feel a little bit more immersive. But there's something about it that just didn't lend itself very well to what they were trying to do. And I don't know if it's the top-down perspective or not, but it was not immersive in the way I thought it was going to be immersive for an immersive sim.
Right.
So I don't know. It's not something that I would necessarily recommend, but I'll probably still be playing it a bit. Maybe if they patch it, just to see if it improves over time. But right now, I wasn't really feeling it. Still put about probably 10 hours into it. Not an inconsiderable amount of time, but it's it really kind of fell short of expectations. Is the best way I would put it.
Sounds like it.
Yeah,
Sounds like it didn't do what you wanted it to do.
It really didn't, which makes me a sad boy. But anyway, did you have a game that you've been playing recently you'd like to?
Oh man, do we have time for that?
Probably not. We'll save it for the next one.
I've recently been playing a bunch of things. As normal, my attention span for games is all over the place.
Yep, same.
So I've been playing a bit of Kingdoms of Amalur Re-Reckoning on stream on Fridays. I'm planning to try Dead Kell, I believe. I need to hit level 10 first, though, so I have another, hour or two, maybe.
Sure.
My camera's fuzzy again. Before I can do that, so at this point. This will be after that, but hopefully by the time this episode comes out, I've hit level 10 and I've started Dead Kell, and we'll see what that's all about. Because I was like, why not do something new that I haven't done in the game on stream if I'm going to stream it?
Oh,
so
sure.
I'm going to try that.
Yeah.
I'm also, for that, I've tried sorcery as my main thing this time.
Oh, okay.
And the first flame mark I got, I was like, all right, let's try this. I'm like, oh, you can mark multiple at a time. That's cool. And then I'm like, let's try it out. And all of a sudden it just murders everyone. I'm like, oh, this is great.
Yeah.
The next thing I'll be getting is the chain lightning.
Oh, very nice. Yeah.
Ability. And I'm like, ooh.
Yeah.
So I'm doing chakrams, of course, chakrams.
Always.
I think I was gonna do, I don't know, right now I think I have a bow. Because I got a really good damaging bow. I was gonna do scepter, but then I got the spells. I'm like, well, the scepter takes mana.
It does.
And the spells are better. So let's take something that doesn't use mana. I might try Feyblades? I don't know. I haven't decided the secondary. Chakrams always are fantastic.
Sure.
But I'm going mostly sorcery with a bit of finesse.
You could try a stave if you wanted to. I mean, they're
iffy on them.
Close. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they're definitely more up close.
Yeah.
Aside from Kingdoms of Amalur Re-Reckoning, however, I decided to...
Oh boy.
Try my hand again at the Witcher 3 Wild Hunt.
Okay, interesting. I was thinking about going back to that at some point too.
And I also decided to see if there were some mods for it.
Oh, okay.
There are quite a few mods. Unfortunately, they're not really optimized to install with the Vortex launcher as well as I'd hope. So a lot of them you have to download and install manually, which is kind of a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
It's fine. But one of the mods I found is about a 10 gigabyte graphic overhaul mod
Oh,
that turns everything into, I think, Ultra HD.
whoa. Okay.
So it goes from being what it used to be in the base game to being everything's now really nice looking.
Yeah.
Really nice looking. I'll
Yeah.
probably give you a link to put a couple visuals up on that
Sure.
if
Yeah.
you remind me.
That would be great.
But it's like it's going from this thing here to that there, and I'm like, wow.
Big difference.
I'm like, there's a big difference.
Yeah.
I wanted some mods maybe that made it easier to like the combat a little better. I found one that I think enhances the targeting a bit. Lets the soft lock controls not be as strange.
Yeah.
So I think that one actually, I don't know if it's working the way it's supposed to, but combat hasn't felt quite as tanky.
Yeah.
And I found another mod for the camera to, for instance, when you're using the Witcher senses, how it's pulled really up close against his shoulder.
Sure.
I found one that lets you adjust the camera settings for all sorts of different stuff, like swimming, horseback, interior, exterior, Witcher senses, and I've pulled the camera back to give me a bit more FOV and a bit more. So when I use Witcher senses inside, it pulls back up farther, so you're still seeing torso up instead of just shoulder and back of head.
Oh yeah.
So it's like, yes, I can actually see things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So with those, I'm like, all right, this is a lot nicer. And I'm playing through that, and as I'm playing through it, I'm not skipping a bunch of the story because it is a good story. Again, The Witcher does a great job storytelling, and the environment and everything is really good.
It's a highlight.
And the investigation of the game is fantastic. And so as I'm playing it, I've got Graveyard over here, who's also kind of paying attention to some of the story beats. So I just did the quest line with the Bloody Baron.
That was a famous one, yeah.
Which, yeah, it's very, very well known, I guess. Yeah, it's famous in that series for being what it is, but she's never played it, so.
Sure.
I was like, yeah, this one's a really interesting quest line, and I got to the, the botchling.
Yep.
And I'm like, this is horrifying, and she's like, oh geez, oh dear.
Yep. Yeah, it sure is.
Obviously, I turned him into a lubberkin, because obviously being a good witcher is what I want to do. I just want to be, kind of benevolent.
I think that's what I did too. I wouldn't say it was, but
on the flip side, in Re-Reckoning, I'm doing stuff I kind of haven't done before. So in Webwood, I just got there because I was like, I need storage. Let me get my house, please.
yeah.
In Webwood, I decided to kill the guy. The guard. Instead of saving him and running the guy who asked me to kill him out of town, I actually killed him.
Oh.
And I think when I get to Castle Yolvan, I'm gonna try and side with the Fae.
Oh, okay.
And see how that goes.
Yeah.
Because I haven't done that before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And as soon as I sided with that guy, and he's like, all right, cool, I need you to go do this. And he's kind of being snippy with me. I'm like, wow, this guy's actually kind of a fucking dick.
Yeah, he really is. He is.
I'm like, I should have just killed you like I usually do.
Yeah. Fair enough.
But yeah, those are two of the games I've been playing.
Sure.
That and Planet Zoo, but I go back and forth with that. I've been playing that because Crave has been playing that, and I got some cheetahs in my zoo and some monkeys in my zoo, and people are just like throwing money at the zoo now.
Perfect. I love when people throw money at my zoo.
Yeah,
it's
and that goes into when I think we were talking about game modes.
Probably.
Whenever we were talking about those, easy mode, story mode.
Oh, easy mode,
might have been
story
in the chat.
mode. Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah. So
sure.
Those have kind of been what I've been playing. Witcher and Re-Reckoning and Planet Zoo.
Sure.
And whatnot.
Yep. Yeah, I was playing. It's good to know that you're going to Witcher 3 because I played probably. I was probably 100 hours or so into Witcher 3 by the time I haven't picked it up in a very long time because I don't know if it lends itself quite as well to replayability as some of the other large epic RPGs, but the one thing, as we've mentioned before, that was problematic was the actual combat. So many of the other things that are great The storyline is practically Shakespeare, especially when you get into the Bloody Baron quest line. It's just it's poetic and very very interesting with the way that it's developed for characters. That storyline was actually built by CD Projekt Red. That was not from the novels.
Oh, okay, good.
I was interested when I heard about that, but that does not come from the novels. That was specifically designed for the game. And some of the other ones, there's one that's about like a storybook where it's like a twisted version of the Golden Goose and the Big Bad Wolf and all of that. Those are fascinating. But yeah, then you get to the combat and you're kind of like going, this never feels quite right. It never feels quite right. If they could just use the Kingdoms of Amalur combat.
Yeah, more fluid.
Yeah.
I think actually playing Kingdoms of Amalur is the reason I want to play The Witcher, is because they're both very much action and very much story heavy.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Where I didn't want to play more Kingdoms of Amalur on my own off stream if I'm going to stream it. So I wanted to play something similar but different.
Yeah. The compare and contrast on that is definitely interesting because there are things that KOA does way better, I think, especially in gameplay. And there are things that I think The Witcher does, especially with character development and world building. And it would be really interesting to see how, you know, if you could kind of just take the best of both worlds and just do like the I got Witcher in my Kingdoms of Amalur. No, you got your Kingdoms of Amalur in my Witcher. That kind of thing. But yeah, so that and also yesterday I tried picking up, because it's a free play weekend, so I'll see how I feel about it if I want to actually get it. Did
you pick up New World?
No.
Oh,
no.
Because that's a free play weekend too.
Oh, it is? I didn't know that.
Currently.
Yeah. I probably won't, though.
I don't blame you.
Yeah. Was Grow Song of the Evertree, and the...
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and mostly just because that looked like it very charming, and I thought it kind of reminded me a little bit of Stardew Valley, which it does. You know, early impressions of that are pretty positive for me. I liked the look of it. The, you know, designing your character at the beginning was fun. You know, it does eventually get into the, okay, let's go do some farming work very quickly.
Oh, hold on 1 second. Since you're playing Grow Song of the Evertree a bit, here's my first question for you.
Yes.
What do you think of the book?
The book's cool.
The book is terrifying.
The book is terrifying.
I want you to put just a screenshot of that book's face right on the video
book's
here.
Face? Okay.
Yeah, because it's like it goes right up in your face and starts talking to you, and it's like, oh my god, you're terrifying.
Yeah.
It's a nightmare.
Copper Top and book, those two together. But hey, I mean, you get a giant griffin thing that you get to ride.
Yeah,
about
that's
5
cute,
seconds
but the
in.
book is terrifying.
Okay, fine. The book is terrifying. That's just the name of the episode. The book is terrifying.
I've played about like 4 hours of it, and I haven't gone back to it since.
Sure.
Because I've been doing other things. So it's one of those games I feel is kind of charming and kind of like cool to begin with, but doesn't seem to grab me and make me go, yeah, I want to play more of this.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I'll see if I really want to continue on with it. Journey's out right now, but so anyway, those have been some things that. Oh, and as we've already mentioned, I was playing Rage, but don't worry, we'll talk about that in more episodes about specific mechanics. But anyway, so that's been some things that we've been playing. We'll probably do this a little bit more frequently just because we end up playing a lot of games that don't necessarily warrant a specific topic, but that we, you know, want to discuss a little bit more about our impressions of it. So that'll be good. But anyway, so that comes to the conclusion of Total Pebble Knockdown for this episode. Yet another one. I think that's what we have to start.
Another one in the bag.
Total Pebble Knockdown. Another one. We're going to start...
Wait, no. Another one in the dice bag.
Another one in the dice bag. We're going to start doing a naming convention that's similar to Sharknado. just the next one. Just those kind of things. But until people want to find out what Sharknado we have in store for them next time, Alice, where could they go to find more information about Total Pebble Knockdown?
You can find more information about Total Pebble Knockdown over at totalpebbleknockdown.com.
While you're there, you can click on our Patreon banner and see some of the stuff that we offer over there, including full video episodes before any of the individual episodes even release. And you can also find us on every podcast app known to mankind. And if you are on Anchor, feel free to leave a voice clip on those episodes. We may respond to you or use them in the show. You can also find us on social media, and I am at Citanium.
I am at EXP Limited, and the show is at Pebble Knockdown.
And for all of your pebbly needs, make sure to follow us over there. Until next time, noting that the book is terrifying, we will end this episode. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you on the next one. Goodbye for now.
Bye.